Hello and welcome to The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Rakhee Bakshee. You know that in this show, we keep looking at pertinent issues that surround us, and through personalities, we try and understand them. So right now in this episode, we are really looking at what happened from Pathankot, after Pathankot, and what lessons that we should learn. And talking about this is a very special guest with us, Mr. Vivek Katju. He's a former diplomat. I welcome him onto the show. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Something that we are not only angry about, anguished about, but lessons, as I said, we should learn from. So let's start. Why Pathankot happened, according to you?
Well, Pathankot took place soon after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Lahore. But there was a background to that visit. That visit happened after the External Affairs Minister, Sushma Swaraj, had visited Islamabad. And before her visit, the two national security advisors, if you recollect, had met, I think, in early December in Bangkok. Now, there was an attempt at normalizing relations, at reinstituting the dialogue process between the two countries.
But would you say, and somebody would also like to argue that maybe the timing, I mean, though everybody looked at the bonhomie of the two leaders when Nawaz Sharif and PM Narendra Modi met, greeting him on birthday, and the surprise Lahore visit, as it was called, the timing would have been a little different, I mean, or this whole occasion kind of backfired.
Well, it's difficult to say. Most people feel that the attack was pre-planned, that it couldn't have been put in place within, say, a week or immediately after the Prime Minister's visit to Lahore. But the important thing is that even if it was pre-planned, it was not called off. So the people who carried out the attack, the organization that these people belonged to, the leadership of that organization, and those who I believe control such organizations in the service of the Pakistan state, decided that despite the Lahore visit, despite the decision of the two governments to re-establish contact, to resume the dialogue, the attack must go on. And that is significant.
Okay, but as you're referring to the kind of the claimed outfit and what we are thinking from our own, sources and the kind of thing that we're identifying, I mean, the authorities, that Jaish-e-Mohammed is behind it. But where would you really like to look at?
No.
Looking at the kind of planning which was there.
No, the Jaish-e-Mohammed has in the past carried out fairly sophisticated terrorist attacks.
We know that.
After all, they were behind the Kandahar hijack, they were behind the parliament attack. So the Jaish-e-Mohammed has the capability to undertake such actions. And in this, I think there is every reason for us in India to believe that there are elements of the Pakistan state who assist the Jaish in the planning and the management of such attacks.
So I would like to go back to again December 13, 2001, when Parliament was attacked. So again, one would ask that what lessons actually we learned, understanding Jaish-e-Mohammed and the operations and the mindset behind the leaders, to really come to a conclusion as to how to kind of negate or thwart such kind of activities which could happen and which happened in Pathankot.
Well, there are two elements to this. The first is putting our own systems in place which will make such attacks extremely difficult. I do believe that no country in the world can entirely eliminate terrorist action.
True.
Especially if there are state elements of a neighboring country behind such attacks. And that's a fact. The Pakistan state has undertaken cross-border terrorism in India through its proxies for almost 3 decades now. And I have personally, in my assessment, seen no change in Pakistani approaches, because the pursuit of low-intensity war or terrorism is part now of Pakistani army's security doctrine. If you see the triad that they pursue, there is conventional warfare in which they are inferior. There is then the nuclear element, and they have developed a very sophisticated capacity both in terms of warheads and delivery systems. But the third is the deliberate use of terror. against
But
India.
this was quite big to really, we are still, I think, shocked. We are still maybe working on it. But the way it happened is called other means of war. In fact, it was almost like a war on India, as somebody would describe. Despite our soldiers showing all kinds of bravery and we paying respect, we know that this was a major case of attack against India.
But of course it was. I think there is no doubt about it. We shouldn't be under any illusion. And I, for one, suspect that that the Pakistani army will continue with such actions. Because, as I've said, in all the evidence before us, there is nothing to suggest that they've changed. Now, some people say that the appointment of Lieutenant General retired Nasser Janjua as the National Security Advisor of Pakistan is an indication that the army and the civilian government led by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif are coming on the same page as far as India is concerned. I respectfully would like to disagree with these assessments. But till there is conclusive proof that this has happened, I, for one, don't think that any change has occurred or any meaningful change has occurred.
So looking very keenly, and I'm sure you have been part of, things that have happened earlier also in the past, and you are keeping an eye as a very keen observer also. How would you really look at this whole sustained momentum of dealing with Pakistan? We know that we want all the issues to be addressed. We are trying. I mean, in the current dispensation, we know that the government has shown all keenness and interest. I'll go back again to my question of initially when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was sworn in, this whole shawl diplomacy, as we call it now, the birthday diplomacy as it's being called. So all kinds of softer measures to maybe harsh measures. But where are we moving still?
Well, successive governments have wanted to engage Pakistan in trying to normalize relations. I think successive governments have also gone out of their way to do so. Certainly, Mr. Vajpayee did in a very meaningful way. I think the UPA too, in its own way, tried to reach out to Pakistan despite all the setbacks that they received. And it's quite clear that Prime Minister Modi has a vision of the region, India's place in the region. And that's a valid vision. It's a good vision. And in this, he feels, to my mind, that Pakistan has to be brought in. He himself, while he addressed the Tri-Services Commanders, a conference in December, said, and if I'm quoting him, he said that we are engaging Pakistan to try and turn the course of history. So that is the great ambition that he has. And great leaders have great ambitions.
But that ambition, I would say, gets shaken by the kind of mistakes, let's say, which happened during this Pathankot attack. I mean, we are also, if you read all these papers and the reports that are coming in, the kind of mistakes and lapses which have happened. I mean, number of issues that could have been addressed but were not addressed.
No, there are two aspects there. The first is that first is the external aspect. Now, obviously, if you set about changing the course of history or with a country and put the bitterness of the past behind, then you need an interlocutor from the other side.
True.
Now, Nawaz Sharif may be one such interlocutor, but we know that Nawaz Sharif is not an independent actor in Pakistan.
Exactly.
That there is the Pakistan army. So it takes two hands to clap. And certainly, the Pakistan army is giving no indication that it is. And the Pathankot attack reinforces the impression that it has shown no interest to go ahead. As far as lapses, etc. are concerned, that is within the purview of India's security apparatus and its efficacy in dealing with such cross-border attacks.
So do you think, so two things, as you rightly said, maybe externally and internally that we are talking about. Let's take the internal part first also, that things that could have been avoided. Number of elements that one could look at strategically speaking, and which are coming in the papers. We know right from, the car which was hijacked to, let's say, who could have been really responsible, who were the real agencies guarding it, whether there was coordination between agencies, whether we could have been technologically more advanced, things that are coming out. where would you really look at?
I think there is need for a thorough examination of this entire episode, uh, starting from its external linkages
Okay.
to what happened once these terrorists crossed over. And in that investigation, we must not only look at the mistakes that were made, the guidelines that perhaps were not followed,
Yeah.
but also examine whether these guidelines and the systems that are operating for coordination between the central agencies, and the state government and their security apparatus, whether they are sufficient. There is time, because national security is involved and we can't play around with national security. So this is the time when the political class as a whole must not carry out politics, but must look at all these elements so that the bureaucracy and the foreign service and as well as the security agencies and the defense apparatus can work in a harmony on these issues.
I think it's time that we should do that. We are taking a very short break out here, but we'll continue the discussion. Also talk about the external part, as you rightly said, and we'll take up some issues on that. You're watching The Quest right now on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Rakhee Bakshee. We are talking right now to Mr. Vivek Katju. Don't go away. Some very, very important questions that I think he'll understand and answer for us. Yeah, welcome back to the show. You're watching The Quest here on Rajya Sabha TV. We are talking about this whole Indo-Pakistan dialogue and actually what happened, and tragically what happened during Pathankot attack and the lessons that we're learning. So externally talking about it, and we know that we, as you rightly also try to say, that we are very keen to maintain dialogue and peace with Pakistan. How does that happen? But
Well, now the crucial issue is whether Foreign Secretary Jaishankar will undertake this visit to Islamabad to talk to his counterpart to discuss the modalities of the comprehensive bilateral dialogue.
Do you think it's going to happen
announced.
really?
The government has said that they are waiting for a Pakistani response. Pakistan has indicated that it is following the evidence or the leads, as the word they use,
Yeah.
to look into this matter. The leads given by us.
How serious it is when the Pakistan government, Pakistan says that, you know, please give us leads and information, we'll work on it and we share your concerns.
In the past,
Exactly.
they've not taken all this seriously.
Mumbai attack we saw.
Mumbai attack is evidence enough. So this time around, the change is that they have said that we are going to pursue the leads. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, in his conversation with Prime Minister Modi on January 5, said that they were following the leads. He also said, interestingly, that Pakistani government will investigate the matter.
Okay.
Which leads me to believe that they are indicating that they will carry out their own investigation also.
And how important do you think that word and that term is, keeping in mind as we are trying to understand the whole complications in the Pakistani government itself, as you talked about Army's role, ISI?
Well, investigation means that we'll weigh the evidence that you've given us, we will take this forward, and we will come to our conclusions not only based on that evidence, but our own investigations also. Now, interestingly, our statement, which the Prime Minister's office issued, rightly indicated that the Prime Minister had conveyed the need for firm and immediate action against the perpetrators. And the implication was quite clearly, if action is being sought from Pakistan, that look, these are Pakistani nationals who've carried out this attack, and we expect that you'll take action against their organizations, they themselves, the organizations, the leadership of the organizations, and whatever links are found. Nawaz, the Pakistani foreign Prime Minister's office, in its statement, did not say anything about action.
That's a crucial point.
It said that we will investigate the matter, and it focused on the need, as indeed the Pakistani Foreign Ministry statement had, to continue with the dialogue.
So let's try and really analyze in an in-depth manner the whole statement which comes from, as you said, Nawaz Sharif, because Prime Minister Modi had just visited him, and it comes just after that. How would you really psychologically look at it, that what Pakistan is trying to do, show its intent, but as you rightly said, that do you see any gaps there in their whole approach?
Well, I think what the Pakistanis were saying is that we can't take action unless we've investigated and come to the conclusion that the leads that you have given us are pointing in one direction, and we've realized that yes, our people carried it out. So it's only then that action can follow. Our statement, and correctly, our statement says that Pakistanis carried it out, that we've reached the conclusion that Pakistanis carried it out, but the Pakistanis haven't reached that conclusion as yet. So there is naturally that
has to be read correctly.
Has to be read correctly, and that there is this gap. Now, if the Pakistanis reach the conclusion that we have reached, that they were Pakistanis, and then the question arises, what action will they take? Will they take, as we have asked, as Mr. Modi has asked, firm and decisive and immediate action, or will they dilly-dally? So there are question marks at the moment, and that is why if you see Indian government sources, as is being reported in the press, they are saying that, look, we will take the next step, which includes the Foreign Secretary's travel, based on the Pakistani reaction.
Rightly so.
To the and whether what action is going to Pakistan.
But evidences would show, and I'm talking about again our Indian side, how authorities are looking at it. All these evidence, right from the footprints, all these examinations would show that Bahawalpur and Jaish-e-Mohammed and Maulana Masood Azhar, we know, is a mastermind, is behind it. Of
course it is. There's no doubt about it. But the question is, are Pakistanis going to acknowledge it? That is the issue. If they do acknowledge it, it
but
will...
But that's the key test also, as I'm saying.
Of course it is a key test. And that is why the question is whether the army and Nawaz Sharif are on board, because this would mean quite clearly a major transformation of the Pakistani security doctrine.
Exactly.
If they were to take action, then it is that.
And how would you look at this?
If I may just add, it is almost, not exactly, but it is almost like the dilemma that Musharraf was put in after 9/11, when the Americans said, you take action against the Taliban.
And how would you look at it right now from the international point of view, the whole geopolitical aspect?
Well, I think the whole world realizes that Pakistan is an epicenter of terrorism. And therefore, I am confident that, that the leading countries must be putting some pressure on the Pakistanis, because everyone has acclaimed the Prime Minister's visit to Lahore as a great and visionary step in diplomacy. So they would be putting pressure to come
in
clean.
India, we know that allies are also voicing, their concern against it all. Shiv Sena has been very vocal.
I think part of it is local Indian politics. Politicians will play politics, so I think that we can keep apart. So the Pakistanis are under pressure. There's no doubt about that. But the Pakistanis know how to handle pressure. They've handled pressure in the past. In 9/11, after 9/11, the matter was so serious that when the Americans demanded action, Musharraf turned 180 degrees from support to the Taliban. He let the Taliban hang and dry, but not for long.
So how would you now, in a holistic manner, look at this whole idea about composite dialogue taking place? Every time an intent, maybe every time an effort, but every time there is a hurdle.
You see, the real problem is that the only answer that we've been able to devise is yet to Pakistani terrorist provocations is to call off the dialogue. Mr. Modi is trying to depart from that. And that is why, in keeping with the understandings reached between the National Security Advisors in Bangkok, there has been no knee-jerk reaction. No official statement has issued as yet from the Ministry of External Affairs. The only statement that has come is the Prime Minister's office statement about what Mr. Modi told Nawaz Sharif. Now, so we've been very circumspect because we want to give space to Pakistan. And in a sense, Pakistan is on test.
And how would you look at the NSA's role here?
Well, the NSA is playing the role that is expected of a national security advisor. I think this is what is expected, and he is performing that role. He is an official of with great experience,
Exactly.
and so he is performing his role. But again, he can't sort of drive the Pakistanis in one direction. He can point things out to them, but ultimately the Pakistani army will take its own
And
decisions.
let's take some time on this whole Kashmir issue. I mean, so back to Kashmir. In fact, we are talking on a day when we've lost the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Mufti Mohammed Saab. How would you look at what's happening in Kashmir and how Kashmir becomes the focal point whenever we want to really reach out to Pakistan?
Look, the Pakistanis believe that the Kashmir issue, or the issue of the state, Jammu and Kashmir, is the main bone of contention between India and Pakistan. That's not correct.
Which is not correct. We all know that.
The real problem is Pakistan's continuing negativity and hostility towards India. They have to change their thinking. They have to come to the conclusion that good relations with India are in the interests of Pakistan. Now, there are elements in Pakistani civil society and I believe in the Pakistani political class who have reached that conclusion. And you can see that in the writings that come out in the Pakistan media.
What you're saying is very significant, if that is really.
No, I think
how
that
we're
is,
looking at
there are elements, there's no unanimity, but there are elements there. But the Pakistani religious parties, apart from the terrorist groups, the religious political parties, do they subscribe to that? No. And crucially, does the army? Because at the end of the day, it is the Pakistani army that decides their country's India policy. Have they reached the conclusion? They say that they have. They say that Nawaz Sharif and the army is on the same page, but there is no evidence
of this. Are we again on a
this.
path which we'll say is a vicious circle, wherein again we talk about the government, the army comes in, we talk about the dialogue and these things come in. So, I mean, what is the road ahead?
These are the realities of the Pakistan state. So the road ahead will always be difficult and very difficult for the Indian leadership, because the Indian leadership wants to reach out, wants to normalize relations. But at the end of the day, whether there will be an adequate reaction and response from the Pakistanis is an open question.
So, so looking at, again, I'll come back to even the PM's intentions. I mean, and somebody would say that he would concentrate more on this very, very critical issue. How do you really look at how India really takes its step very carefully forward?
The Prime Minister seems to be committed to the idea of wanting to reach out to Pakistan. And in itself, that's a valid idea. As I said, successive governments, many of his predecessors have tried the same thing. The Prime Minister has, through his visit to Lahore, given an unmistakable diplomatic stamp to that intention. But the Pakistani response through the Pathankot attack leaves many questions, and now it remains to be seen what is the approach that the Prime Minister will take. I think his commitment will remain, but perhaps he might become a little more cautious.
And as a country, do you think we are talking about learning lessons? We'll become, we will become closer to reality as it is, and understand not only internally. You've been part of the external effort. How to really go ahead?
Look, I don't believe that the internal dimension relating to our society has anything to do with Pakistan. And it should not have anything to do with it. It is a matter solely within the province of our external relations, and it should remain like that. We should not confuse dealing with Pakistan as...
Because there are other things which go on, for example, people-to-people contact, all these parallel things which go on, whether who should come in and who should not. These kind of things sometimes come up also. So there are other things also going
But
on.
of course there are humanitarian issues. And if there are good relations, that humanitarian issues will be addressed. But the humanitarian issues, to my mind, have to be subsumed within the parameters of the Pakistan policy, which should be determined by our national interests, including our security interests. They can't only be security driven, but security is a very important component of dealing with a hostile state. So, but in dealing with Pakistan, there should be no illusions about the nature of the state, of the Pakistan state. And whenever we make a mistake in assessing that nature, I believe we as a country fall into error. And certainly, those who feel that Pakistan is like India, that the Pakistanis are like Indians, are wrong. They are not like us.
Exactly.
They've gone on a totally different trajectory after 1947.
True.
Their language may be somewhat like our language. They may dress, they may look like us, but their mind works very differently. What animates them? Their thinking. Because it is virtually becoming a theocratic state.
True.
And it is going in a very dangerous direction. Can we help them to turn? No. I believe these are battles that they have got to fight themselves.
And I hope that, when we are ending this conversation, but that tragic events like Pathankot, I mean, we are talking about an external episode maybe, but also something which really shakes us and, internally affects us a lot, should not happen. But thanks for talking and sharing with us all those insights on what should happen, not only in South Asia, but how we deal with Pakistan. Thank you so much. I will keep talking to you as ever on these issues. Thank you so much for coming here on Rajya Sabha TV. And that was the quest on Rajya Sabha TV. We try to look at some of the issues, and I'm thankful to Mr. Katju who tried to give some insights, but maybe we'll keep talking about these issues that are very, very important around us. And thanks for watching this particular edition of The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. Namaskar and bye-bye.